For something that unites us, we don't talk about suffering a lot. It seems to be a topic that we evade. Different religions tend to present suffering as something that is meant for bad people. They tend to present suffering as something that ordinarily shouldn't happen. And I find this shocking. I find it shocking that people get shocked when they realize how easily suffering can come to anyone at any time. The reality is, suffering knows no discrimination. We will not all suffer the same things, but we will all suffer something. And believe me, suffering does not know young or old, neither does it know rich or poor. All suffering knows is that you have breath in your lungs. In suffering, the poor man says that the reason he is suffering is that he has no money. If he had money, his suffering would be made lighter. He even goes ahead to say that he'd rather be rich and suffer than be poor, because poverty in itself is some kind of suffering. But the rich in their suffering say, what is the point of all the money I have if I can't wipe away this suffering? I'd rather be poor than go through this. Suffering is one thing that would always have people wishing for what they don't have. Suffering would have you longing for a life that you've created in your head. Suffering would have you wishing you lived a different life. You would trade your best gifts if they would alleviate your suffering. But the truth is, you have no proof that if your circumstances were different, you would still not suffer. Suffering is very integral to life, and it is a necessary part of our growth. But perhaps suffering is too complex a word for us to understand. The dictionary defines suffering as a state of undergoing pain, distress, or hardship. Maybe pain is a word we are more familiar with. From the initiation of life, pain is introduced. The process of childbirth is the first proof that pain is as integral to life as breathing is. Through pain and distress, a child is pushed into the world. It is the first inkling we have of the process of breaking through. Then the child is cut off from his mother's womb into this unfamiliar world. We find again that as the child's teeth begin to erupt, pain shows up again. It's almost as though pain precedes every significant moment of growth for life. Its first steps are preceded by moments of falling and rising, some of which are painful to the child. Over and over again, we see how pain cannot be excluded from life and how we must all go through it one way or the other. What about grief? We will all go through grief, and grief can be shockingly painful. In one moment, a loved one is there, and in the next, they're not. But it's not something anyone can escape, because we all die one day. People will grow and they will die. Some may die way sooner than we expect, but they die anyways, and we are left to deal with the pain. At some point in the world, we were all facing the same demon. We were in the pandemic that united us in ways that we would never have imagined. We all suffered in multiple ways. People lost loved ones. People lost their minds. People had to face their biggest fears. They were stuck at home with the demons they had previously ignored. People lost their sources of livelihood, their businesses and careers. We all suffered, and for the first time, both the poor and the rich came face to face with an enemy that didn't care who they were. We were all bound by a common enemy that didn't care what we had or did not have. We were exposed, then we were indicted. We were all bound by a common suffering. The problem with suffering is that we spend too much time being shocked. We never get to process our emotions. We get stuck in the shock of being jolted from our comfort to sudden discomfort and hardship. And the thing with shock is that many times people do not recover. But my hypothesis is, what if we anticipated suffering and prepared for it? What if we could brace ourselves for battle before the battle arrives? What if we develop the mental fortitude that we need for periods of suffering? We must accept that in life there would be seasons we don't understand, and these seasons are an integral part of our growth. These seasons will be hard, painful, and sometimes even devastating. And many times it's not karma trying to get in the way, it's just life. Life will always present you with both sides of a coin. You cannot exactly choose one without choosing the other. They come together. The two sides of a coin cannot be separated. You will have moments of bliss and moments of rest, but there will always be moments of suffering. Now here's the thing. Life will present you with suffering, but you alone decide your reaction. What many people think is that life dictates. Be happy, be joyful, be sad, or cry. Life doesn't do that. Life gives you lemons and doesn't wait to see what you do with it. It's your choice to maintain a state of peace regardless of the chaos that's around you. It's your choice to maintain a smile even in the toughest periods of your life. It's your choice to choose joy even when everyone thinks you're mad for doing so. Life will always present our seasons, but you must determine your reaction. So what you find is that if you maintain a perpetual state of calm in the event of troubled waters, your peace may be disrupted, but your calmness will take over. What I'm saying is that the choices you make every day contribute to who you are. How you choose to react to situations every day eventually begins to develop your character. If every day you respond in anger to all the situations around you, when suffering comes, you will remain perpetually angry and you wouldn't be able to snap out of it. This is why we see different reactions to suffering in different people. They aren't necessarily reactions caused by the situation itself, but they are caused by our natural dispositions to events that disrupt our normal. So check it now. How do you react to uncomfortable situations? How do you react to frustrating situations? You're not suffering yet. It's just a bit of discomfort and frustration. Do you tend to ignore uncomfortable situations? Are you always shying away from processing your emotions? Do you tend to blame anyone and everyone else when you're going through tough times? Or do you spend time in self-condemnation and pity when life happens? I want you to see the link between your natural disposition to things and your reaction to the shock of suffering. Because periods of suffering often come with no announcement. They give no warnings. You may never see it coming. 1 minute you are a great place, in another, it seems like your whole life has been thrown apart. How do you bounce back? How do you recover? What will help you push through? To push through your period of suffering, you must master the art of controlling your reactions, because your reaction to the slightest of things will determine your reaction when suffering comes. I guess what I'm saying is choose joy always. Choose peace. Choose rest. Let joy be your natural disposition. Let joy be your first response always. It isn't always easy, but it's even more difficult to transition from a state of joy to complete sorrow or anger when you've mastered the art of staying in a joyful state. When your disposition is joy, when life hits, you find it easier to move on, because the truth is life will always happen. You can't stop it from happening, but will you allow it to continue determining your reactions? You can't allow every situation to disrupt your peace and upset your balance. You must get to a point where your reaction remains the same, and even when you stumble, you find it easier to rise again. Because the shock of suffering can be devastating, and also those who have mastered how to react in every season of their life survive. Grief is painful, and especially more painful when you lost your loved one. Loss is heavy. Heartbreak is devastating regardless of whether it's from a lover, friend, or child. Yet, these are things that we would all go through at some point in our lives. What if instead your disposition to grieve was the fact that you got to experience the beauty of love with that person? True love is a precious gift that not many get to enjoy, but you enjoyed it. Suffering will always be what it is: hard, painful, and shocking. But who you are will determine to a large extent how quickly you recover from the shock of suffering.